Welcome here to NTV's Grow. You might just wonder where we are, Steve.
We're on location at what they're calling Raising Nebraska, the new exhibit at the Nebraska State Fair.
Pretty cool. It's a big, huge building, as you can see, a pivot even behind us, and a grain bin. It's pretty neat. We'll have more on this later on in the show.
We're going to have a sneak peek coming up later today.
Also coming up in the show here for you, every drop counts, and many farmers are trying to find ways to conserve water and making it work.
And others are dealing with crop damage, and they're searching for options on how to bounce back. One way could benefit livestock producers.
And as we mentioned, Raising Nebraska, we're going to get a little sneak peek for you here at what is new at the Nebraska State Fair.
For more than 7 decades, farmers and other industry have, of course, depended very heavily on the Ogallala Aquifer.
Yeah, for the past several years, of course, water has depleted out of that aquifer, and of course, many are concerned about trying to get it recharged as well. It's been declining each year since irrigation began in the 40s and 50s. Kansas Water Office Director says some areas in western Kansas already can no longer use the aquifer. Some farmers switch to dryland farming and wonder what the region will look like in 50 years. Many farmers are really trying to conserve and taking strides to make it all possible.
And of course, we all know about that great flash drought we experienced 2 years ago. This year, certainly, nature has given farmers a boost.
And there's some valves.
On farms like this, it's time to irrigate. There's no pivot and no pipes on this field, as Doug Sadoff does his part to use less water.
It was flood irrigation or gravity irrigation before. Now we're saving quite a bit of water, fuel by switching to drip. Last year I used just a freckle over 8 inches of water, so it's flood irrigation I was probably using 20 to 30 inches of water.
Whether it's subsurface drip systems or more efficient pivots, technology has made a difference. But that's not the big reason farmers are starting up later this year.
Been fortunate with some rains, a little cooler weather. Now we're just starting to irrigate. Things are heating up a little bit, things are growing and looking pretty good.
Still, after 2 years of drought, farmers feel the pressure to conserve.
Whether we like it or not, I think the day's coming where we gotta, we're only going to be allowed so many inches of water per year.
It's resulted in heated debates as natural resources districts set regulations.
How much water can I use?
Rules differ across the state. Some NRDs have a ban on new wells. Many require meters to measure the flow of water. And farmers are also encouraged to use sensors in the ground to tell them when the soil needs water. So instead of watching the neighbor, they look at the numbers on their iPads.
Got to trust it, I know. Sometimes it's hard to do when you see the neighbors rolling.
Saving money and saving water.
Good for the aquifer that we can maybe get some water back into that thing this year.
An update on wheat harvest and progress there in Kansas. They're pretty much done almost.
Nearing completion. The National Agricultural Statistics Service reported 95% of the wheat is now in the bin. Usually by this late in the year, all the wheat has been cut. Corn is rated 15% excellent, 49% good. Soybeans in Kansas are 67% good or excellent.
In Nebraska, the USDA says about 54% of the state's wheat crop has now been harvested, which is slightly behind the average 61%. Nebraska's two biggest crops of corn and soybeans appear to be in good shape. 76% of corn crop and 73% of the soybean crop is in good or excellent condition.
Marilyn, we saw what happened with that hailstorm recently, just the devastation to those area corn producers especially.
Absolutely, and they're of course weighing their options, trying to find out what they can do. One of those options can actually benefit livestock producers. Here's NTV's Megan Johnson.
What kind of crop it is, how badly it was beaten by the wind, rain, and hail, and what a farmer hopes to get out of it now all have to be considered. But ag specialists say turning those fields into livestock feed sources can pay off in more ways than one.
Bruce Anderson tells farmers gathered at a crop disaster outreach meeting what looks like a total loss might yet provide food.
When we look at a lot of these hailed crops that we've got throughout the region, one of the things that we may be able to do in those areas is convert some of them as a salvage operation into some forages.
Anderson, a forage specialist, says chopping what's left of the corn for silage is a common answer, but late-growing plants or cover crops like turnips, oats, and some rye can put extra nutrition in the field fields for livestock come fall.
We get them planted oftentimes during the month of August so that they'll be ready for use later on in the season and provide feed that maybe we're losing as a result of the hail from other crops.
Many farmers put cattle on stalks after harvest anyway, so experts say a ruined field can still have benefits.
If there is such a thing when you lose a crop, is the ability to maybe make even a few dollars as a corn or especially a corn farmer, renting out those acres to a livestock producer.
Injured plants have disadvantages too. Specialists say growers should be mindful of nitrogen buildup. Too much can be bad for animals.
There can be some toxins like aflatoxins and actually some other poisons that can be detrimental to livestock. So it goes beyond the nitrate level as well.
While they're something that we have to respect and should be testing for in some of these feeds to make sure that we're not at high levels, they're not something to fear or completely run away from.
Experts say it's not as perfect as harvesting a healthy grain crop, but forage and grazing options may blunt some of this loss.
You graze it much like you would a pasture. You don't want to abuse it or overuse the forage source out there. And also you don't want to pack the ground any more than you have to. So use common sense.
Looking at some of the opportunities we may be able to take advantage of to kind of make the best out of a bad situation.
The forage specialists have some of the same advice agronomists do when it comes to storm damage. They say waiting to see what regrows is okay to do, and insurance payments may dictate what can be planted now.
Also, another business picking up the pieces of fire devastating a John Deere dealership.
The dealership in Fairfield really just destroyed. NTV's Sarah Kirkley has more.
After departments from 4 counties fought a fire for most of the day, this is what's left of Fairfield's Oregon Trail equipment.
It only worked because of a lot of mutual aid and a lot of good people that volunteered a lot of time out here and worked very hard.
And they did it in dangerous heat.
We had a lot of them that were fatigued from the heat. They're wearing bunker gear and they're in a very hot scene and were multiple air packs too.
Now the investigation into the cause begins. The state fire marshal and an insurance investigator have been on the scene, but officials say because of the chemicals in the building, dangers do remain.
There's still a few hot spots. They had to wait for the fire to be out to start their investigation, so that could be going on for days.
At the Fairfield Co-op, thoughts are already on the impact going into fall.
It's going to be huge, especially with harvest coming on. Pretty much the hub of this area for all kinds of equipment sales and service. I mean, parts, and I mean, now you're going to have to drive to Hastings or to one of their other stores.
It's a very important part of the community here, so they're going to try to get up and run temporary. They're bringing in a double wide and going to try to run out of a small shop along with some shops for local farmers are going to loan them so they can get us through harvest.
Although official damage numbers are still being calculated, the Clay County Sheriff says this building is likely a total loss. He says it was valued at more than $2 million. He also says multiple combines were inside and were destroyed. On top of all that, this is a major employer for the area. But there is some good news. No injuries have been reported.
Of course, we talked about earlier how farmers are striving to conserve water. There's something called moisture probes. It's a bit of technology that's being used. Pretty cool. We're going to take a look at it.
And we're going to leave you with some sights from the Buffalo County Fair.